Beaches have 1 to 2 foot waves and OCS 2 to 3 foot. Now through September 6th, during the BMW.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. The Supreme Court today issued an order that could force the Biden administration to reinstate a controversial Trump-era immigrant program that forced asylum seekers to wait in Mexican border cities. As NPR's John Burnett reports, the court refused to block a ruling from a Texas judge that said President Biden had unlawfully canceled the program known as Remain in Mexico.
The High Court, in a brief unsigned order, told the Biden White House that it cannot rescind the 2019 program that was harshly criticized by human rights groups. The program forced tens of thousands of migrants to wait in Mexican cities like Matamoros and Tijuana, where they lived in squalid tent camps and were preyed on by extortionists. The court cited a decision last year that faulted the Trump administration for arbitrarily and capriciously canceling DACA, the program that protects migrants brought here illegally as children. Biden had sought an emergency stay from the court. With today's ruling, the administration must now argue its case in front of a federal appeals court. John Burnett, NPR News.
President Biden says the U.S. has evacuated more than 70,000 people from Afghanistan, and he's hoping to be able to wrap up this operation by next week. This despite concerns that there are still thousands of Afghans who fear for their lives under Taliban rule. And here's Michelle Kellerman reports.
Biden says the Taliban have taken steps so that the U.S. and its partners can get their people out, but he calls it a tenuous situation, and he hopes to finish it by next week.
The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops.
The State Department says 1,000 Americans have been evacuated, though it's not clear how many are still trying to leave. Say they've been reaching out directly to Americans to guide them through the airport gates. A Taliban spokesman says the U.S. must stick to its self-imposed deadline. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The House voted today to advance a critical piece of President Biden's sweeping economic agenda. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the chamber narrowly approved a $3.5 trillion budget resolution, setting the stage for new
$1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that cleared the Senate earlier this month. In a statement, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she's committed to passing the infrastructure bill by September 27th and would rally her caucus to support it.
NPR's Windsor Johnston. Asian markets are trading higher at this hour. The Nikkei in Japan up about 0.3%.
Good. Could I get just a one fish taco?
You say one fish taco?
One fish taco and one loaded veggie burrito.
CIA and that Taliban's top political leader told to the fly on the wall of that one. What were to be right?
We visited William Burns and Mullingar Dar, met on Monday in Kabul. We don't really have details, and of course it really begs the question, where did they meet? Burns could have gone to the airport or the U.S. embassy. It seems highly unlikely that Mullingar Dar would go there, so maybe the presidential palace. We just don't know. But it does suggest both sides are being pragmatic and see the need for a dialogue.
No thanks.
High-level meetings, the Pentagon keeps saying they're in daily contact with the Taliban at the Kabul airport. Non-Taliban members are effectively performing crowd control. The military talks about expanding the perimeter there. It seems the Taliban is pushing crowd back on them unless very stringent arrangements have been working.
And once we get on the past the immediate crisis, this problem is very strange agreement. What are we expecting in terms of contact between
not.
Yeah, and we should note that there is history here. There's a lot of history, obviously, but there is personal history between the CIA and this specific Taliban leader. Tell us about it.
Well, Mullah Baradar first encountered the CIA as part of a joint Pakistan-CIA operation that captured him in 2010. He spent 8 years in a Pakistani prison. When he got out in 2018, he negotiated this U.S. Taliban agreement in Qatar. And so now he's met with the CIA director under very different circumstances than his previous encounter.
As NPR National Security Correspondent Greg Myrie. Thank you, Greg.
My pleasure.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Cliff Kid, makers of Z-Bar, the organic whole grain snack bar that active kids love. It's time to get back to school and slaying dragons at recess, because imagination needs fuel. Learn more at cliffkid.com.
Hi, this is Anura from Washington, D.C. I'm about to officiate my twin brother Ornav and soon-to-be sister-in-law Sarah's wedding, which was delayed a year. You're listening to the NPR Politics Podcast, which was recorded at
2:07 p.m. on Tuesday, August 24th.
Things may have changed by now, but we are definitely going ahead with Ganesh Puja, a Hindu ceremony to remove all obstacles. With that, enjoy the show.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, very nice. Congrats to the happy couple.
Exactly, that's so lovely. Hey there, it is the NPR Politics Podcast. I'm Danielle Kurtzleben. I cover demographics and culture.
I'm Aisha Roscoe. I cover the White House.
And I'm Deirdre Walsh, congressional editor. And today we are talking about Congress, specifically House Democrats clash over two big bills. One is Joe Biden's $3.5 trillion economic plan, which is full of Democratic priorities like universal pre-K, child care, and environmental efforts. The other is a bipartisan infrastructure deal passed by the Senate, which we have talked about a lot on this podcast. The conflict has been over how to move forward on both of those. So, Deirdre, this is why you're here. Walk us through the basics of this conflict, because there's been a split between a smaller group of more moderate Democrats and the rest of the party caucus. So what exactly has that tension been?
Well, it's certainly been a really messy couple of days for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I mean, there has always been tension inside the caucus between the moderates and the progressives, which make up, a larger number of the House Democratic caucus. But the moderates wanted to vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed the Senate earlier this month. Now, they wanted to give President Joe Biden a win. They wanted to pass it and have him sign that bill so that they had an accomplishment. The progressives in the caucus were concerned that that could lose momentum for this broader $3.5 trillion economic package. And they argue that the voters that gave Democrats power in Washington, both at the White House and on Capitol Hill, wanted Democrats to do all of these things, and that they needed to deliver on the full domestic agenda. And they were worried that if one got split off from the other, it could jeopardize the second package. So Pelosi has really had, a balancing act, because